All right, let's get right into it. When you think of English kings, names like Henry VIII or Richard the Lionheart probably pop into your head. But here's a wild fact. Out of more than 60 monarchs, only one has ever officially been called the Great. That man was Alfred. So the big question is, in a history packed with famous rulers, what on earth did this guy do to earn a title that no one else ever has?
To really get why he's so great, we have to start by seeing him at his absolute lowest. The most famous story about Alfred isn't some epic battlefield victory. It's this one, about the cakes. He's a king, but he's in hiding, a refugee in his own kingdom, so wrapped up in the crisis facing his people that he can't even watch a few cakes bake. And this isn't just some cute little folktale. It's a perfect snapshot of a man on the very brink of losing everything.
And that right there is our starting point. Because to truly appreciate the incredible comeback, you have to understand the catastrophe that came first. What kind of disaster could possibly bring a king this low? Well, it was the kind of disaster that was about to wipe his entire civilization clean off the map.
So let's set the scene. Back in the 9th century, the place we call England today wasn't one country, not even close. It was this jumble of 4 rival Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. You had Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, and Alfred's kingdom, Wessex. And all of them were about to face a nightmare coming from the sea.
Now, the Anglo-Saxons were no strangers to Viking raids. They'd been dealing with them for a while. But this was something totally different. The Great Heathen Army, as the history books call them, didn't show up just to steal some gold and sail away. No, they came for land. They came to conquer, to settle, and to completely erase the Anglo-Saxon way of life.
And you can just feel the chaos they brought by looking at what was happening in Alfred's own family. In just over a decade, 2 of his older brothers become king and then die. The crown is just being passed down this line of doomed brothers, not in some peaceful ceremony, but in the middle of a brutal, desperate, and losing war. This was the world Alfred grew up in.
So when his brother Ethelred is killed in battle, suddenly, bam, Alfred, just 22 years old, is the king. But he doesn't inherit some peaceful, stable kingdom. He gets a crown, all right, but he also gets a war he's already losing, a shattered army, and the crushing weight of being the absolute last line of defense.
And things did not get off to a good start. In fact, his first few years as king were just one disaster after another. Which leads us right back to that story about him burning the cakes.
I mean, his early reign was a total mess. Just look at this. First, he's defeated in a major battle almost as soon as he takes the throne. Then, he has to do something really humiliating for a king. He has to pay the Vikings to go away. He literally buys them off. Now, that bought him about 5 years of very fragile peace, but the Vikings just used that time to gobble up the other kingdoms, and then in 878, they came back for him.
This was the knockout punch. The Vikings launched a surprise attack in the middle of winter, something nobody did back then. They completely overran his royal court. Alfred and a handful of his followers barely escaped with their lives, running into the wilderness. The kingdom, for all intents and purposes, had fallen.
And this is what brings us full circle, back to the swamp. Alfred becomes a fugitive king. From a secret fort on an island called Athelney, hidden deep in the marshes, he starts to fight back, waging a guerrilla war. But make no mistake, this was the absolute bottom. Wessex was the last Anglo-Saxon kingdom left, and its king was on the run.
But it's often from the lowest point that the greatest stories begin. From that tiny fort in a swamp, Alfred planned one of the most incredible military comebacks in all of history. This is where the legend of Alfred the Great really starts.
And this just lays out his strategy so perfectly. It was methodical, it was brilliant. Step 1, he comes out of hiding and pulls together his loyal militias. Step 2, he forces a single massive winner-take-all battle at a place called Edington, and he wins. But he's not done. Step 3, he chases the Viking army to their own fort and traps them there. And then, the masterstroke. Step 4, he starves their leader, Guthrum, into surrender and then forces him to convert to Christianity with Alfred himself as the godfather. Genius. So what was the result of all this? It was a peace treaty that literally redrew the map of England. The country was formally split in 2. The Vikings got to rule the north and east, an area that became known as the Danelaw, while Alfred secured his control over the south and west. He hadn't gotten the whole country back, but he had saved his kingdom.
But Alfred was smart. He knew this victory was just buying him time. If he wanted to make sure his kingdom never collapsed like that again, he had to do something radical. So he launched one of the most ambitious national security projects of the entire Middle Ages.
And his whole plan, this incredible vision for a secure kingdom, it all revolved around a single number, 33. This wasn't just some random number. It was the blueprint for an entirely new way to think about defense.
And here's the genius of it. He created a network of 33 fortified towns, or burghs, and look how they were arranged. They were spaced out so that no part of his kingdom was more than a day's march from one of these safe spots. He even built new roads to connect them all. What this meant was that a mobile army could get to any attack anywhere in the kingdom within 24 hours. He didn't just build walls, he literally built an immune system for his kingdom.
But okay, military genius and incredible fortifications. That's only half of why he's called the Great. Alfred believed the Viking invasion wasn't just a military problem. He saw it as a cultural and even a spiritual crisis. He was convinced God was punishing his people because they had become ignorant.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Listen to Alfred himself. He wrote that learning had gotten so bad in England that there were barely any men left who could even understand Latin, the language of all the important books. Decades of war had destroyed the monasteries, the centers of learning. He felt like he was king of a kingdom with amnesia.
So what he did about it was truly revolutionary. Before Alfred, any learning that happened was locked away in Latin, a language only a few churchmen could read. Alfred's big idea was to make learning accessible. He wanted the most important books and ideas taught in English, the language everyone actually spoke, so that all free men could learn.
And he put his money where his mouth was. He started a school at his court, bringing in the best scholars he could find from all over Europe. Then, he personally led this massive project to translate what he called the most necessary books for people to know. Books on philosophy, history, and religion, from Latin into Old English. He was building a library for his entire people in their own language.
And this quote, this one really gets to the heart of the man. It's from one of his own translations, and it tells you everything about his motivation. This wasn't just about policy for him. He had this deep personal drive to live a worthy life and to be remembered for his good works.
So let's pull all these threads together. Let's answer that big question from the beginning. Why Alfred the Great? Well, it's because he wasn't just a great general, or a great administrator, or a great scholar. He was all of them, at the same time, right when his kingdom needed it most.
When you just lay it all out like this, the case is pretty overwhelming. On the military front, he saved his kingdom from being totally wiped out and built that incredible burghal defense system. As an administrator, he wrote a whole new law code and completely reorganized the government's finances to pay for everything. And then, on top of all that, he was a scholar king who single-handedly rescued English culture from a dark age. It's that complete package of leadership that makes him so unique. And that's the final thought I really want to leave you with. Alfred started out as the king of Wessex, just one of 4 Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. But by defending his kingdom, by fortifying it, and by giving its people a shared culture and a shared language through his reforms, he created a powerful center of gravity. He set out to save Wessex, but in the process, he may just have laid the foundation for the entire nation of England.